The story of the Constitution. The United States Constitution is our country's most important document. It is a set of rules that was written over 200 years ago. The Constitution explains how the three main parts of the government, the President, the Congress, and the Supreme Court, work together. But who created the Constitution, and why? The American colonies declared their independence from Great Britain, but they had to fight a long, hard war to win their freedom. It was called the Revolutionary War, and it finally ended when the British surrendered to General George Washington. Americans rejoiced, and George Washington became their national hero. But the states could not agree on how to live together. The large states bullied the small. The rich states dominated the poor. America was like a large team constantly fighting. The team had to be united, but how? During the summer of 1787, 55 delegates met in Philadelphia to try and solve this problem. They were the most famous men in the country.
Hello, George. Good to see you again.
The delegates selected me, General George Washington, to be in charge of that meeting. They hoped that I'd be able to guide and inspire the delegates like a teacher or a parent. I suppose that's why they called me the father of our country. Truth be told, the delegates decided to write a new set of rules for the United States. And these rules are called our Constitution.
The delegates argued. The large states have more people. Why shouldn't the large states have more power? But the small states have just as much right to equal representation. All summer long, the debate raged back and forth. Finally, Virginia Delegate James Madison explained some ideas he and his friends had about sharing power fairly. Everyone agreed, and they signed the Constitution. No one was happier than Benjamin Franklin, the oldest member of the Constitutional Convention. From his desk, he had been patiently looking at the sun painted on the back of Washington's chair, trying to decide if it were going up or coming down. But now I have the happiness to know, he said, that it is a rising and not a setting sun. In other words, the new country had a bright future. The Constitution explains, in only 7 rules called articles, how the United States government should run. The articles say that the 3 parts of the government, the Supreme Court, Congress, and the President, must cooperate and work together as a team. The Constitution was never really finished. The delegates wisely predicted that in the future, people might want to add or change parts of it. These changes are called amendments.
There have been many amendments to the Constitution, but most of the original document has stayed almost the same for the last 200 years. Remember these words. They're from the first part of the Constitution. We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. That is a tall order, but we must have done a fair job of it, for our Constitution has lasted a long time, and it's tested every day. Well, don't take my word for it. Read it for yourself.
Let's review. The Constitution explains how our government's 3 branches, the President, the Congress, and the Supreme Court, work together. The Constitution contains 7 rules called articles. The Constitution can be changed by adding amendments. Can you think of any rules at your school that help everyone? George Washington. The Constitution created the role of President of the United States. But why was George Washington chosen to be president? What kind of person was he? And where did he come from? George was born on a farm in the British colony of Virginia at Wakefield. As a boy, he spent more time farming than going to school. When he was 15 years old, George went to work helping to make land surveys. His drawings were used to help the settlers. He also fought for the British in a war against the French. Later, he returned with his new wife, Martha, and her 2 children to his Virginia farm, Mount Vernon. George and his family were happy there. Their farm grew apples and pears and raised cattle and horses. George was a very good rider. This was during the time of slavery, so much of the work was done by Africans brought to the colonies against their will. Unlike most slaveholders, Washington worried about their future.
So in my will, I said that they should all be free upon my death, and those who were too old to find work for themselves could live at Mount Vernon as free people, and they would be taken care of until their deaths. Well, the colonists wanted freedom from England, and they chose me to command all of the Continental Army. My first victory came on a cold Christmas night. With 2,400 of my men, I crossed the Delaware River and surprised the enemy and captured Trenton, New Jersey. But then, of course, the British took Philadelphia, and I spent a long, lonely winter right here at Valley Forge, keeping an eye on them. This was my headquarters. Oh, we were freezing. There was practically no food, and many among us had no shoes or warm clothes. Still, despite the hardships, in the end we won. Lord Cornwallis surrendered to us at the Battle of Yorktown, Virginia in 1781. The American Revolution was over, and we were a free country. I had but one thought, to return to Martha and Mount Vernon, my home.
George spent 4 more happy years at Mount Vernon before he was asked to lead the meeting in Philadelphia that created the Constitution. After the convention, George was elected as the first president of the United States. He was sworn in on April 30th, 1789. He had already served his country as a farmer, a general, and a statesman. Now he was the country's leader. George wanted to stay in touch with the people of the United States. He and Martha traveled in a fancy carriage all over the country. Many important leaders from all over the world came to visit them.
Naturally, I was elected to a second term, but there were new problems to face. France and England were at it again, fighting that is, and many Americans wanted to help France because they had helped us in our war. I didn't think this was a good idea for such a young country, and I told them so. Many people wanted me to be president a 3rd time. But to tell you the truth, I was tired, and I missed my home. In my farewell address to the country, I said, "Observe good faith and justice toward all nations. Cultivate peace and harmony with all. It will be worthy of a free, enlightened, and at no distant period a great nation to give to mankind the example of a people always guided by justice and kindness."
Finally, at the age of 65, George returned to Mount Vernon and the outdoor life he loved so dearly. He was there only 2 short years when he was caught in a storm and became ill. He died on December 14th, 1799. Throughout America, citizens mourned his death. To show their admiration, Americans named their capital city Washington, and have continued through the years to honor Washington's memory by putting his name on monuments and other things. Can you think of anything that is named for George Washington? What did we learn? George Washington led the colonial army in the Revolutionary War. He helped win our country's independence by defeating the British. Washington guided the men who wrote the Constitution. Washington was elected the first President of the United States. Why do you think George Washington is sometimes called the father of our country? The Great Seal.
You may recognize my good friend General George Washington from his picture on the dollar bill. But this is our picture here on the $100 bill. Ben Franklin is my name. I'm a printer by trade. The official name for money is currency. And there are all sorts of interesting things that you can learn about a country by its currency. Well, take a close look at the dollar, for example, and you'll see the most amazing things.
The new United States had a new set of rules, the Constitution. It had a new president, George Washington. Now, all it needed was a new symbol. The symbol would remind us of all the things that are important to the United States. Look on the back of the dollar. Here it is, the new symbol. It is called the Great Seal. It is not the kind of seal that eats fish and swims. The Great Seal is more like an official stamp of our government's approval. It is two pictures inside circles. One is the front of the seal and one is the back, just like the heads and tails of a coin. On the front is the American bald eagle, our national animal. A shield covers the eagle's chest. That way the hunters can't shoot it. The shield's 13 stripes are like those on the United States flag, the original 13 colonies. The eagle's claws hold an olive branch and arrows. The olive branch means peace, but the arrows show that we will defend our freedom. The eagle's beak holds a ribbon with the Latin words E pluribus unum. In English, this means from many, one, because our many states make one nation. But it sounds funnier in Latin. Above the eagle's head are 13 stars. They stand for the original 13 states. The back of the seal has a big eyeball staring down from the top of the pyramid. That is God keeping watch over everybody. Above the eyeball are more Latin words that mean God approves of the United States. On the bottom of the big pyramid are the letters MDCCLXXVI. That is how you write the year 1776 in Roman numbers. Do you know what happened in this year? The U.S. declared its independence. More Latin words under the pyramid mean a new order of the ages. This says that the United States is a new kind of country because we all agreed to live by the same rules. So, the Great Seal's pictures tell how special our country is. Benjamin Franklin. Almost everyone has heard of Benjamin Franklin. He was an inventor, printer, humorist, diplomat, and contributor to the Constitution. In fact, Ben Franklin did so many things and had so much fun doing them that it is pretty hard to keep up with him. Ben was born in Boston. He was the 15th child in his family. So, to help feed the family, he was put to work early in his father's business, making soap and candles. But Ben thought the business was too stinky. So he went to work in his brother's printing shop. But Ben wanted to write news, not just print it. When his brother refused, Ben secretly wrote letters to his brother's newspaper and signed them with a made-up name. The letters were printed and everyone loved them. But when his brother found out, he got very angry. Ben decided to move to Philadelphia. By age 24, Ben owned his own printing shop. Everyone liked his Poor Richard's Almanac, which was filled with news, information, and Ben's favorite sayings. Ben liked it too.
Here's one. Experience is an expensive school, but fools will learn in no other.
That means that some things can only be learned the hard way, by making mistakes. Well, I say no gains without pains. Words are glorious things, don't you agree? I've always had a deep respect for words. I helped write some of our country's most important words, the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. But words won't fill a bushel. Actions are important too. That's why I traveled around the world convincing its leaders that they should be friends to the United States. Oh, and I've created many marvelous inventions like these bifocals. Yes, I stay busy. Lost time found again is my motto. And I don't believe in laziness. They say that laziness travels so slowly that poverty quickly overtakes him. Oh, yes, even though I'm so busy, I try to make time to help people. I started a library and a school so that people could have books and learn. And I started a hospital and a fire department. Philadelphia became the safest city in the colonies. How do I do it all? I have a simple secret. Early to bed and early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise.
Ben liked to think about science. He studied ants and how they talk to each other. He invented a stove that kept people much warmer and safer than before. He called it a Franklin stove. Some people said Ben was as round as his stove. One time he tied a big kite to himself and went swimming. The kite pulled him right across the pond. Too bad he left all his clothes on the other side. One day, Ben flew a kite in a thunderstorm to prove that lightning was made out of electricity. He told everyone to put up long metal rods on the tops of their houses with a wire leading into the ground. This saved people from fires started by lightning. Almost everyone liked Ben. The colonial leaders sent him to Great Britain. They thought that he could convince the British to let the colonies rule themselves. But the British said no, and Ben returned to America in 1775, just as the Revolutionary War was starting. Back home, Ben helped write the Declaration of Independence. Then he sailed back across the Atlantic, this time to France. The French liked Ben and agreed to send money, ships, and soldiers to help fight the British. When America won the war, Ben came back home to cheering crowds. Ben's last service to his country came during the writing of the Constitution. He was 81 years old and sometimes fell asleep during the long meetings. But Ben was pleased with the country's new Constitution. He happily signed it, knowing that the United States would be stronger because of it.
Well, after working so many years so hard for my family, my city, and my country, they finally let me rest. But even when I'm too tired and sick to get out of bed, I still read and write and help my granddaughter with her spelling. Sometimes I do miss all the excitement. When the well is dry, they know the worth of water. Well, a sleeping fox catches no poultry, and the morning sun never lasts the whole day, so I must be going. Oh, and one today is worth 2 tomorrows. Oh, and a stitch in time saves 9. And a penny saved is a penny earned.
Now, let's review. Ben Franklin was a printer. He wrote and printed Poor Richard's Almanac, which contained news and clever sayings. Ben was a scientist. He created many useful inventions, like the Franklin stove and bifocals. Franklin helped the colonies as a diplomat. A diplomat helps to solve problems between countries. What kinds of things would you invent to make life easier?